The silence in the air was heavy. The clock read 2:37 a.m., but sleep wouldn't come. He stared at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the mistake he had made in his mind. One single moment of carelessness, and everything had collapsed. Have you ever felt that? Like, all of a sudden, every bit of your effort had been for nothing. As if one small mistake had erased years of dedication. The feeling of failure is crushing. The voice of doubt echoes in the mind, whispering that maybe there will never be a second chance. But, what if I told you that some of the greatest comebacks in history started exactly like this? At rock bottom. In the moment when everything seemed lost. Because failure has a cruel way of making us believe it's the end. But sometimes, it's just the beginning of something bigger. Today, I'll tell you a story that might completely change the way you see your own mistakes. Because there's something no one ever tells you about failure, it can be one of life's greatest teachers. So before you give up, before you convince yourself that nothing more can be done, stay with me until the end of this story. You might be surprised. He couldn't stop reliving that moment. The scene played on repeat in his mind, like a movie stuck in an endless loop. The sinking feeling in his stomach, the anticipation, the mistake, and then the silence. The sharp silence that follows failure. The disappointed looks from those around him, the whispers, the feeling that everyone was judging him. At first, he tried to downplay it. It was just a mistake, he kept telling himself. But reality hit hard. The consequences came crashing down like a massive wave, and every attempt to fix things only seemed to make them worse. It didn't matter if it was a business owner watching their company fail, an athlete being cut from the team, or a student receiving an unexpected failing grade. The feeling was the same, helplessness. Like all their effort had been for nothing. The questions came like an avalanche. What if I hadn't tried? What if I had done things differently? Is there still a way back? But no answer felt good enough to ease that sinking feeling. And then came the fear. The fear of judgment. The fear of being defined by the mistake, of never being taken seriously again. The fear that this failure would be the only thing people remembered about him. It's strange how a single moment can shake all the confidence that took years to build. Suddenly, every buried insecurity resurfaced. The fear of not being good enough. The fear of never getting another chance. The fear of disappointing not just others, but himself. He started pulling away. He stopped answering calls. He avoided any situation where he had to face the people who had witnessed his downfall. The failure was no longer just a single event. It was becoming part of his identity. And so, he began to convince himself that maybe it was better to accept it. Maybe it was better to give up. The days dragged on, and the feeling of failure didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. What once seemed like a single mistake now felt like an unbearable weight. He started wondering if trying again was even worth it. What if all of this was a sign that he wasn't good enough? Maybe it would be better to accept defeat and move on. After all, how many people try, fail, and never recover? The fear of the future mixed with the shame of the past, creating a storm inside him. The world kept turning, but he felt like he had been left behind. Every new opportunity felt out of reach. Every small decision was poisoned by doubt. What if I try again and fail once more? What if I become a joke? He was trapped in this cycle, where the fear of failing was stronger than the desire to succeed. And then came the comparison. The silent poison that destroys any trace of self-confidence. He looked at others and saw only success. As if everyone else was moving forward, except him. As if everyone knew what they were doing, except him. That was when a different voice appeared. It wasn't some grand motivational speech. It wasn't a life-changing event. Sometimes, all we need is a single phrase to shift our perspective. What if this mistake isn't an ending, but a course correction? The question echoed in his mind. What if, instead of being an obstacle, failure was actually a detour leading him to a better path? He had never thought about it that way. Until now, his mistake had only been a burden, a permanent mark. But what if he could see it as a lesson? At first, the idea seemed ridiculous. How could something so painful bring anything good? But slowly, that thought started to grow. What if the pain of failure wasn't there to punish him, but to teach him? Little by little, a small spark appeared. It wasn't confidence, not yet. But it was curiosity. A quiet urge to find out if this new perspective could actually be true. And that tiny shift was enough to set something bigger in motion. The spark was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't just drowning in the pain of his mistake, he was starting to wonder what he could learn from it. It was a slow process. The urge to give up was still there, but now, curiosity was competing with it. What would happen if he tried again? What if, this time, instead of running from his mistake, he faced it head-on? He started analyzing his journey. What exactly had gone wrong? What could have been done differently? Instead of just mourning his failure, he began to study it. And that's when the first shift happened. Because up until that moment, the mistake had seemed like something fixed, unchangeable. Now, he started seeing possibilities. Adjustments that could make a difference, lessons hidden within the failure. And then he realized something powerful: failure wasn't an enemy, it was a teacher. He began to notice patterns. How many successful people had endured crushing setbacks before becoming icons? He read about Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school basketball team. About Steve Jobs, who was fired from his own company. About J.K. Rowling, who faced countless rejections before finally publishing Harry Potter. What if the only difference between those who quit and those who succeed is how they handle failure? He decided to try again. But this time, something was different. He was no longer trying just to prove something to someone or to erase his mistake. He was trying because he now saw meaning in his journey. The first steps were difficult. The fear was still there. But now, he knew that failure was part of the process. Every misstep became a lesson, every attempt made him stronger. He started to regain his confidence. Slowly, small victories began to add up. He realized that people weren't as focused on his failure as he had thought. In fact, many admired his courage to keep going. And then, something unexpected happened. What once seemed like an impossible road started to bear fruit. Doors that had seemed shut began to open. The mistake that had nearly destroyed him ended up becoming the key to his growth. But he still didn't know what lay ahead. The biggest turning point was yet to come. The journey had changed. What was once a burden had transformed into wisdom. Every mistake carried a lesson, and every attempt proved that he was more prepared than he had ever imagined. But he still hadn't fully realized how much he had grown. Until one day, something happened. Without even noticing, he had begun to achieve what once felt impossible. Opportunities emerged. People started to see not just his mistake, but his resilience. The same failure that had once crushed him was now proof of his strength. That's when it hit him: if not for his failure, he would never have gotten this far. The rejection that had hurt him so much had actually pushed him toward a much greater path. If he had succeeded on his first try, he might never have developed the strength and wisdom he now possessed. That was the moment everything made sense. The great irony of life is that what feels like a punishment is often a hidden gift. The pain of falling teaches us how to rise stronger. Mistakes force us to find better solutions. Frustration shapes us. Looking back, he realized that the failure he once thought was the end had actually been the catalyst for his transformation. What was once a wound had become a trophy. Because success isn't just about winning. It's about persevering despite the losses. And maybe that's the most powerful part of this story: his biggest mistake wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. Now, a question formed in his mind, and maybe in yours too. If I had never failed, would I have made it here? He smiled. Because now, he already knew the answer. But what about you? What would you do if you knew that failure could be the greatest launchpad of your life? The truth is, everyone fails. It doesn't matter how talented, smart, or prepared you are, mistakes are part of the journey. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up isn't in avoiding failure, but in learning from it. So, take a look at your own life. Is there a mistake that still haunts you? A failure that made you doubt yourself? Maybe what you see as an ending is actually a disguised new beginning. Failure doesn't define you. What you do after it does. You can carry the weight of your mistakes as a burden, or you can use them as a stepping stone. You can spend years regretting what went wrong, or you can use that experience to build something even greater. The choice is always yours. But before you decide, Ask yourself one question: what if you were never afraid to fail again? If this story resonated with you, share it. Someone around you might need this message right now. And if you've experienced something like this, tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Because in the end, it's not about those who never fail. It's about those who keep moving forward, despite their failures. And if you've made it this far, remember this: your failure is not the end. It might just be the beginning of something extraordinary.